If you clicked on this video, you probably have preconceived notions about what charisma is. You might be thinking we're going to get into some psychological cheat codes on how to manipulate people, but we are not. If that's what you are hoping for, then I would suggest you don't watch the video. We are going to be using psychology because as someone who has studied psychology, I do understand and see how much that knowledge has allowed me to change my own life, to shift from being insecure to being more confident in who I am and the things that I have to say. Charisma is the balance between the tangible and intangible elements that make up an individual. It's a mixture of the things that we can physically see, touch, and hear, but it's also the unseen elements that we interact with. We all know that one woman, whether it's someone you know in real life or someone you see depicted on television, who just has it all together. And even if she's not perfect, because none of us are, she carries herself with this energy of really knowing herself and owning her space and taking up space unapologetically. And we can feel the courage of her personality, and the way that she operates in life is fully in alignment with her purpose and who she desires to be. And we want to be her, know her, love her, be mentored by her, operate in the same spaces that she is. So we can see how she would navigate and interact with people in order to have just a little bit of that in our own life. Vanessa Edwards, who is an expert in this field, she describes charisma as a combination of warmth and competency. First is how to make people trust you, and the second makes people rely on you. And her story is one that is just incredible. The way that she went from being insecure and feeling uncomfortable to now owning this space and being an expert in this field, and is a testament to how we can change our mindset in order to create the reality we desire. Although there is so much heavy emphasis on our looks, charisma isn't about our looks. They're nice and they add to, but it's not the core, because we all know attractive people who have ugly spirits and energies and hearts, and we don't like them. And it actually makes them appear physically unattractive. And then there's someone who is not traditionally attractive or socially identified as beautiful, but their energy and the way that they navigate life and the way that they own a room, their words, their body language, all of it makes us feel captivated by them. And if you're someone who struggles with your insecurities, understanding that solving this problem has the ability to impact every aspect of your life. Because when you feel more confident and more capable in yourself, the things that you desire, the way that you strive for the things that you desire, it changes. What you believe is possible for you changes. Instead of playing small and going for the job that is safer, or never starting that business, or going back to school, or deciding that you want to start a family, all of these things can change when you decide that the way that you own the lane that you are in can be created by the person you desire to be. My own story from going from insecure to more confident and feeling like I can own the space that I am in, it started with shifting what I wanted and how I wanted my life to go. But I went from being the person who started high school and my only mission was to disappear. I wanted to be invisible. And even though that was my goal, my personality and who I was at my core didn't even align with that. So I still went after things and tried my best, but there was this part of myself that was holding my own potential back. And before I get into the biggest mistake that I made, I want to unpack what I would like to describe as the roadmap to charisma. So I'm going to break it down into 6 key elements, and the first one being behavioral changes. And the first step is to change the narrative. Neuroplasticity tells us that our brains have the ability to rewire themselves depending on the external or internal factors that we are faced with. Because our brains are adapting, changing, and reorganizing throughout our lifetime, this means that we have the ability for neurons to make new connections and strengthen old connections that serve us. So this means when we're learning something new, when we have environmental changes, stress, diets, exercise, all of these things have an impact on our brain. By learning a new skill and practicing that skill through repetition, we're strengthening that pathway and creating lasting change in our brain. And behavioral conditioning is one in which we are rewarding or reinforcing behaviors that we desire. So in order to change our behavior from insecure to more charismatic and more confident in ourselves, we want to create new neural pathways that reinforce those positive behaviors that align with the behavior that we are trying to create. So when you first start it, it's going to feel uncomfortable, especially if these are not things that you have been exposed to in your life. But the more you practice them, the more you change the emotional narrative surrounding those behaviors, the more natural it becomes to be that person. The example I have of this is at one of my kids' schools, they were telling their peers about the way that we are in our family. And he was describing how my husband chases him around and plays with him. And his friends thought that he was saying my husband was coming to get him in trouble, to smack him. And he said, no, he's playing with me. And then he described how I chase him and play with him. And his friends could not understand that his mother was playing and running around and chasing after him. And the idea wasn't to catch him and get him in trouble. So those little boys have an idea of what a mother should be, what a father should be, and they describe their parents as being too busy to do these things, and they don't give them kisses or hugs or say, I love you. So in their mind, although they can understand what my son is saying, he is speaking the same language as them, they don't have an image of that being normal in their brain. So they're struggling to understand how a parent does that thing, which means that if nothing happens to change that narrative, that will be the narrative that they hold on to in life and what kind of parent they will become because that's what's normal for them. And even if they meet a partner who is the opposite of that, it'll still be strange. So for ourselves, if showing up and being charismatic is not something that we deem as possible for us, if we think we're too shy, we're too insecure, we have too much anxiety, the idea of being that image of the woman we talked about in the beginning doesn't feel comfortable in our body, and it feels abnormal, which means the emotions and the energy that we feel behind those behaviors, you can feel like a fraud, you can feel uncomfortable, it can cause literal anxiety in your body. And it'll feel safer to follow that normal pattern of behavior. And if you think of your brain as being that pattern-seeking neural network, your brain wants to make new connections. It wants to change and adapt to the environment that you are finding yourself in. This is why we do talk about our environments being so integral to who we are. If you're in an environment where it doesn't feel safe for you to be softer, feminine, more confident in yourself, to share your thoughts and feelings, even if that version of you existed, like myself, where I made the goal of disappearing and being invisible in high school, even if the person I desired to be was the complete opposite of that. Now, from me, there was home life situations that made me feel like I wasn't celebrated as being someone who could show up and be full and bold and step into her personality and that be recognized. Now, obviously, that didn't stop me, but in order to shift out of that energy, you have to give yourself permission, even if those examples are not present in your current life. And even if you can't practice being that full version of yourself in the environment that you're in, we can find environments where we can practice that. If that's at school, if that's at work, if that is at home, if that's with strangers when you shop, it doesn't matter. Being able to practice this new version of yourself and rewriting the emotional connections that you have to those current pathways, it keeps me safe to keep my mouth shut. It keeps me safe to hide. It's better for me because of the way I look to not take up space. Whatever lies are attached to that current behavior, by unpacking it and changing it so that you focus on who you actually want to be. Because that's another thing that screws us, is we're so focused and fixated on past versions of ourselves and how in the past we didn't show up the way we should. And in the past we didn't say it the way that we wanted to, and how embarrassing that is. But really, those feelings of embarrassment are not serving us. So we have to detach from them And detaching from them just means that you're not fixating on those thoughts. You're not letting yourself spiral down into emotional chaos because of what you did in the past. Which brings me to the next element of behavioral changes is understanding our emotions through the science of psychology. When you understand that your body is not fighting against you, that it has a desire to keep you safe, and that even stress is seen as a way of protecting you, and that you can activate your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight with just your thoughts, it changes the way that you let your thoughts just race and run away from you. If we don't chase after every thought in our mind, if we don't leapfrog from one thought to the next thought to more catastrophic events in our brain, it gives us the ability to return back to the present moment and what's actually happening. By deciding that you are in control of your thoughts, that doesn't mean we're going to wrestle our thoughts into being what we desire them to be, but it means that we don't have to allow ourselves to float away with those thoughts. It also means that instead of attaching emotions to those thoughts, we can remain more neutral, more calm. And because when your body is activating fight or flight, it is shutting down systems in your body that it doesn't feel like are necessary to utilize at that time. It is diverting energy from them to your muscles because you are designed at that time to just run. And if you have no need to run in your current environment, you're just causing yourself to freeze in those moments. So our nervous system plays an integral role in how we show up in our social environments, how we socially communicate with people. If it feels unsafe for you to be heard, you are going to speak less, even if you have good ideas. It'll also change our behaviors. If you feel like you have to run, it's not safe in that environment, you will dash out. You will not allow yourself to stay and remain in that moment. Same thing with our emotions. They will be up and down and never stable because we are not the ones in control of how we react in certain environments. Now, if the end goal is to be more charismatic, obviously being in fight or flight is not going to help us. Being in freeze mode is not going to help us. Being more calm and safe in our body is going to be the ideal state to communicate. This is why even when people frustrate me or I feel like I have to defend myself, I try to come back to my body, to breathe and be present in my body first before I even think about what I'm going to say to someone in this moment. Because again, if we're in a state of defending ourselves against accusations, or we are less in a state of recognizing that we actually don't have to defend ourselves, or the path that we were going to choose is not necessary. If we go back to Vanessa's definition of charisma being a combination of warmth and competency, this is going to require our nervous system to be in a more ideal, calmer state. The next key part in changing your behavior is to become more interested in other people. Because when we make other people feel like they are important as we are speaking to them, it can change the level of warmth that that other person feels towards us and coming from us. Now, this is going to be natural, right? We're not faking this. So if you're someone who struggles with this because you grew up in an environment where this was not normal behavior for you to show interest in other people, or for people to be interested in you, you want to think about the version of yourself that needed that more caring and loving individual and how to be that for someone else. Because when you're working on being more charismatic, those people have a natural desire to know you, to understand you, to connect with you. And if you're in a state where it is more necessary for you to be focused on this other person, let's say it's a job interview, or you want to make more friends or connect with people, bringing everything back to yourself and only talking about yourself is going to make someone feel like you're less interested in anyone else. You're more focused on yourself. Everyone wants to be seen in a relationship where there is a balance of time and energy on both people. And this is whatever relationship you're trying to create this intentional connection in. The next step to changing your behavior is to actively listen. Active listening is less about hearing what someone is saying, only so that you can respond. It's more about taking in what they're saying, internalizing it, understanding it, in order to craft an intentional response that not only applies to the situation, but adds to the situation. Active listening also requires you to listen more than you speak and to ask intentional questions that help that other person really open up more in the moment with you. We don't want to just be asking questions to be nosy. We want to ask intentional questions that help that other person understand that we are present in the moment with them, that we don't have somewhere else we'd rather be than having this conversation with them. Active listening as well really helps you connect with people on a deeper level. So think about a job where there's that one person who you talk to, but it feels like they're talking to themselves while talking to you. It feels like they're just waiting for a gap to bring the conversation back to themselves, but there's no real genuine interest in what you're saying. Versus another person who not only listens, but they add to what you're saying. They ask you deeper questions, or they reiterate what you've said to them to expand on it, and then opens the floor back up for you to expand on it. Now, again, this is a skill set that deepens relationships, human connections in an intentional way, and it fosters deeper connections in any relationship that you desire. The next step to changing your behavior is to work on giving more compliments. Complimenting people is such a beautiful way of expressing your own confidence in yourself, especially as a woman. When women give me compliments, those are my favorite compliments. They are also my favorite people to compliment, because there is strength about a woman who can give you a compliment. She becomes more attractive in my eyes because I know that she is not in competition with me. Women who give genuine compliments are some of my favorite people because they're people I actually look up to. They're people that in their own life, they have achieved incredible things, and they strive to be better people in anything that they do. And some of them are mothers. Some of them do not have children. Some of them are career driven. Some of them are women who are stay-at-home moms. But there's so much warmth and love in their energy when they open themselves up to give you the same recognition that would also help them flourish. The last part about changing your behavior is to speak with intention. When we are intentional about the things that we're saying, especially when we're having a conversation or an interaction with someone in which, let's say it's just business first, right? These professional settings, when you speak with intention, you are signaling to that other person that you value their time, and you are clear and concise with the way that you speak to also indicate that you value your own time. You're adding to a conversation with purpose and not just hearing yourself speak. In a relationship, this shows up when we are trying to intentionally connect with the other person. You want to give them the room to shine. You're also more supportive of their dreams, their goals, and less of a mindset that everything should be about just one person in that relationship. Speaking with intention also says that you're taking the time to filter out your thoughts so that we're not just saying the quiet parts out loud for no reason, just for attention, just to cause chaos, right? Because sometimes people who just speak randomly without any purpose, especially in environments where it's inappropriate to do so, there's an energy behind it that we all can pick up on. That attention seeking, the arrogance, of the desire to make even that moment about themselves. But when we speak with intention, it also shows a level of wisdom. It shows a level of care that you have for yourself. This also goes hand in hand with listening more than we're speaking, because when we speak with intention, we're also understanding that there's a time and a place to insert our thought to add to the collective. This also makes you more trustworthy because you do the things that you're saying you're going to do. And what goes hand in hand with this is using your actions to speak for you as well. Because when we do the things that we say we're going to do, it signals that we are someone who values our time and do not waste our own time. And again, this can impact any kind of relationship, whether it's business, whether it's romantic. We always love when people do the things that they say they're going to do. It also makes you a better listener because If you're someone who is hearing what people say and then you take the time to do something for them based on what they told you, you are intentionally sending the message that you care about that person, that you want to be of assistance to that person. And again, use your discernment for when this is applicable and when it is not, and how much of yourself you give in these moments and how much you do not. That's another part of this using intention and speaking with our actions, because sometimes it doesn't require us to do anything at all. Sometimes all we need to do is observe. The next key element in the roadmap to charisma is body language. Body language is such a critical piece of charisma because how you carry yourself, the way that you present yourself to people in environments, says a lot more than your words ever will. This is why first impressions are important. People who are charismatic, you can sense their power before they even speak. Because through body language, smiling, facial expressions, eye contact, their hand movements, their gestures, you can receive the message that they are conveying very clearly. So for example, smiling more, not frowning so much. Having a serious face is definitely necessary. Like, it would be weird if you just randomly went around smiling for no reason. But in environments where presenting yourself as your true, genuine self allows you to convey an emotion that speaks for itself. Now, for myself, I am just grateful for life. So having a strong why for smiling or for presenting yourself in a certain way is going to be helpful, right? Because if you just say, I want to smile more because it'll present me as more warm and charismatic, it won't feel natural or genuine, and it'll be uncomfortable for yourself and the other people on the other side of that smile. We don't want to be creepy in our smile, because we're trying to display confidence in ourselves. So for myself, being grateful to be alive, being grateful for the life that I have, for the experiences, for the people in my life, for living in my purpose, that makes me feel lighter inside anyway. So smiling at people feels more natural. And the same for yourself. Whatever it is that you feel happy about, grateful for, it could be that you just are having a really great day and you want that energy to be felt by other people. This is why they say our words are an overflow of our heart, and our body language displays that. People who are naturally happy, they have a happy disposition, they're good people to be around, because no matter what happens, they put you in a good mood. Same with eye contact. Eye contact is part of our body language that displays our confidence level. Now, sometimes this can be difficult, especially if you're neurodivergent or you're just really uncomfortable with looking at people. So I don't want to pressure you into doing it if it feels unnatural, but just practice looking people in the eye, at least when they're talking. Even if it feels, sometimes I don't always look at people in the eye because I can get distracted by their face or their response to what I'm saying. And it can take me out of the energy of connecting to what I'm trying to say and clearly communicate that. So it doesn't have to be that you're like this the entire time that somebody's talking to you or that you're talking to them, but just practice doing it more often. Practice talking to yourself in the mirror. Practice looking at yourself and communicating. See the way that you communicate when you talk to people. Something that I used to do at one of my jobs when I had presentations, I'd actually practice what I was going to say, not necessarily in the mirror, but in general. But if you practice it in the mirror, then you can see the body language, your hand movement, what your eyes do. So that when you're speaking to someone, sometimes we get uncomfortable. We can feel like they're judging us, or do we look weird when we said certain things? So if you know what you look like, then you'll feel less uncomfortable when you're actually talking to people. Because eye contact, whether we like it or not, is a way of displaying trust, displaying confidence and competence in situations where it is necessary. Sometimes you have to know the rules of the game and play the game as you see fit. Work environments, unfortunately, are extremely political. So you don't want to show up, and even if you know that this is the thing that shows that you have more confidence, but you don't like it because it makes you feel awkward, and then you're passed up on promotions. It's unfair, right? We're not saying that it's fair, but if that's the game, then we have to play it, right? The same thing if you show up in a certain outfit and the business is requiring people to look a certain way. That's not for the rest of your life, or that's not in other areas of your life. But for this one, it's necessary. Going back to those neural pathways, if we don't have this as normal for us, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel strange, but you can do it in a way that feels more natural for you. The next one is nodding. When we are talking to people, being mindful of how we are gesturing our approval or interest in what someone is saying can help the person on the receiving end of our communication feel like we are in that moment with them. We are locked in listening to them. Showing that you understand what someone is saying helps that other person feel like you are listening. It feels like you are connected to them in that moment. When we're thinking about body language, one of the fastest ways to communicate that we are panicked or not confident in ourselves is to be too much in a rush. I remember there was this one time when I was going to get this stone. I was shopping for this stone and we looked all over the place. I went with my father. We looked tired by the end and I just wanted to go home. And my dad said, let's go to this last place. And typically the places that sell the stone, it's either outside or it's in this big warehouse. The last place that we went to, it was very different. You could just tell. You walked in and the reception desk was made out of stone. And it was really pretty. So you couldn't just walk in and look around the stone like the other places. You had to talk to the person. They had to walk you back. And the whole feeling of that environment was that they really cared about their business, their image, their customer, the experience of that store and what it felt like going in. And I went back to look at the stone. The floor was carpeted and they had, I don't know if you've grown up in an environment where your parents, my father always made us vacuum the lines in the carpet facing the same way so that it looked nice. This place had that. And the person walking around, it was the receptionist, she walked around with you and took note of the stone that you liked. And then they would send you the images in an email so that you can make your decision. That environment was not what I was expecting. So it first made me feel really uncomfortable. And then I also felt awkward about the fact that she had to walk around with me and take notes of what I liked. And then I thought to myself, I remembered about this quote, people who have an abundance of time, they're not in a rush. They are slowing down. They're intentional about where they go. I calmed myself down to not talk myself out of feeling worthy of that moment. And when I did that, the woman's energy changed. She became more open and we started having conversations about the tattoos that she had and the meaning behind it and the fact that she was from a different country and what brought her here, her child, her life story. Now, if I had not within myself checked my own brain and my own emotions that I had attached to those thoughts, my energy to her would not have been conveyed that I feel uncomfortable in this very bougie environment and I feel guilty about the fact that you're writing down the things that I like. It would have looked like I didn't like her or I had a problem with her. When you're not moving so quickly, imagine speaking to someone and you're trying to practice, literally say to yourself, I am practicing being more charismatic. I am practicing divorcing my insecurities. You will present yourself in a different way. If you think that the other person has better things to do than talking to you, you will throw out words like that. And I struggled with this too. This is why I'm saying it's possible to change, because I struggled with communicating my thoughts in a slow way because I felt that I had to hurry up with what I was saying, that what I had to say was not important, or I was bracing for impact and criticisms. But not everybody thinks of you that way. Another part of being able to communicate more charismatically is gesticulation. One of the classes I had to take for my degree was a communication class. And I am not a big fan of public speaking. However, again, it's just a skill set. And so I would practice at home with my husband what speeches I would say and how I would communicate them. and practice staying calm enough in the moment in order to communicate those thoughts. If you're in the crowd watching someone who is uncomfortable in their body and they're uncomfortable with what they have to say and they don't believe in what they're saying, their body language and the way that they look around and talk to you, it's going to make you feel uncomfortable too. So when we feel like we can slow down, we're confident, and we don't feel, again, in a rush, we're going to use our hands in a way that conveys the message of confidence. And one of the tips that my instructor gave me was to move around a little bit more as I was in front of the class. Just something to practice. It's something to get comfortable with. When you're standing in the mirror and you're talking, try using your hands a little bit more. You don't have to use them all over the place. You practice saying to yourself, I am opening up, I am calm, I am not in a rush. And in doing so, I am allowing myself to use my hands more as I'm speaking. The next element in being more charismatic is enhancing your conversation skills. The art of conversation is one that many of us have not been taught and we feel uncomfortable with, we feel insecure about, and that comes off in how we communicate with people and how we allow others to communicate with us. Conversation skills of someone who is more charismatic, again, going back to that example we have of that ideal woman in our mind, I feel like charismatic people are more honest with how they communicate with you. There isn't this level of mystery. They're not trying to be mysterious. Sometimes we have these images, especially of the quiet girl who doesn't say much and there's a lot more to her, and then you want to get to know her. That is for entertainment purposes. In real life, especially when we're trying to use these skills to advance ourselves or our skills, being that quiet or more mysterious person intentionally trying to say less so that there's more mystery or avoiding people, that can backfire. Just giving the example of relationships, if someone is trying to communicate that they like you or they're interested in you, and you're trying to spend more time being mysterious and not communicating your intentions or desires in a mutually honest exchange, right? In a natural, healthy relationship, it's going to become imbalanced. Same thing with work. Sometimes in work environments, it can be hard to navigate the social politics of a work environment, but people just want to feel like they can trust you or know you. So I'm not telling you to go and hang out with these people if you don't feel called to, if it doesn't feel in alignment with you. But in those environments where you rely on each other or that work environment is more connected, it can cause you to feel like the odd man out if you're working more on being mysterious than connecting with people. And again, use your discernment, because we're not working ourselves into people pleasing. This is a confidence, right? This is a sharing in moments when it is necessary, being intentional about the way that we communicate. And our conversation skills, they come from a different place when you are in that honest, charismatic energy versus manipulative or people-pleasing energy. Another part of this is healthy banter. When I think about some of my friends who I adore, and these connections are very deep, they're very honest, we have a healthy level of banter. They sort of remember our inside jokes and then we repeat them back to each other. And when you think about those friends that you can have that with, those inside jokes and that healthy back and forth, it does strengthen those connections. It strengthens those relationships. And you can practice this even with people that you don't necessarily know. This is why it needs to be intentional, because we don't want to just be making fun of people and then screw ourselves up. There's a way of doing it that is lighter, that is more friendly and still respectful. And I think women who master that healthy playfulness in a conversation, they're just fun to be around. And this is not flirtatious and sexy to attract the opposite sex. The idea is to be playful in your own energy, to be present in your own energy. That lighthearted nature of a woman who is fulfilled and living in her purpose, she is fun. She is friendly. She is flirtatious, but it's not inappropriate and it's not sexual. It's embodied. The last part of conversation skills that I think is very important is to speak with intent. And we touched on this before, but just in the realm of conversation skills, when we have people who are not trying to add to a conversation in an intentional way, in a healthy way, in an honest way, this is when we can stray from charismatic to manipulative or toxic, because what they add to that conversation actually brings it down, or it's trying to fuel the negativity of something. We don't want to be in the realm of gossiping or fueling negative energy. We want to be constructive, to be adding to the whole, especially women-centered relationships and connections. It's a way of uplifting each other. This is why sometimes certain things we need to keep it to ourselves. Even if you feel like, I remember seeing this woman one time who people were criticizing her makeup and the way that she did her makeup. And you may be thinking, well, it would be helpful to communicate that you don't like her makeup or the way that she did it is not as flattering. But again, I go back to in my other videos where some of us, it is a returning to ourselves, an act of rebellion, a fire that we are reigniting when we pour into ourselves. You may not like the way that they did their makeup, or you may feel like this is something that could be done better. But if at the end, even though your goal was to be helpful, if it harmed that other person and it wasn't received in the way that they wanted it to, or it wasn't received well, it would have been far better for us to not say those things. This is like, you think about with children where they make something that maybe you can't quite see what they've made, or you don't understand the purpose of it. Instead of saying, well, I don't get it, you ask them questions to explain their thought process behind it. And you find something that you do like, or that you like the demonstration of their skills or creativity. This is speaking with intention. Sometimes we think, well, I'm just trying to be honest and I just want to say what's on my mind. But if that doesn't help that other person, then we're doing it for ourselves and we're not thinking about how that is received. And again, we're using our discernment, because sometimes this is not what you should be doing. This is not the energy, but you get what I'm saying. The women I'm speaking to, you get what I'm saying. When we speak with love, when we speak with a kindness, when we speak with the intention of connecting to other women or to the people in our lives, there's a way that we communicate our words, and there's an intention behind it. And the energy behind it comes from a pure place. It's not coming from a place of trying to cause harm and chaos in another person's life. The next part of conversation skills that's important is your inflection. The way we communicate will convey whether or not we are confident in what we are saying, or we feel insecure, right? Sometimes we ask things in the form of a question, even if it's not meant to be a question. If I say to you, my name is Alana, obviously it's Alana. That's my real name. Depending on the environment that you're in which charisma is necessary, you want to present yourself like it's not difficult or painful for you to speak. And we just practice saying things, not necessarily monotone, but in a way that conveys that you are confident in what you are saying. When I think about women who are just full, they are living such a beautiful life. You can see the way that they communicate is just so melodic. You like listening to them speak. You feel like, even if you have no clue what they're talking about, it just feels comfortable to be in their presence. Now we're getting into physical appearance, which is the next pillar of charisma. So physical appearance is not the most important thing, but it is going to be important. It is part of the whole, right? Because how we present ourselves, we live in a society where people do judge the way that we look. That doesn't mean that you need to have the fanciest clothes, or your hair is always perfect, or you have the perfectly manicured nails, but you present yourself in a way that communicates you care about yourself, you love yourself. This is for a very intentional woman, a very purpose-driven woman who is shifting from being more insecure to confident and charismatic. We're not robbing ourselves of our uniqueness, we're embracing it. The last step, the last pillar in embodied charisma is actually the most important, and this is authenticity. None of this other stuff. None of it matters. None of it is helpful unless you are authentic. How you communicate, what questions you ask, your intention behind how you speak to people, the way that you present yourself, your energy, none of that is going to be received the way that you want it to unless it is authentic to you. Your personality, the way that you show up in life. Charismatic people are not just stoic and intentional businessmen, right? They can be bubbly, they can be flirtatious, they can be joyful, bright people. It's all about who you are as a person. We are not trying to body snatch ourselves and have a whole personality bypass. We're trying to find the authentic nature in which we communicate and amplifying that to its highest level in order to align ourselves with the version of ourselves that we want to be. Because that version of ourselves is going to obtain way more in life than the version of you that is intentionally hiding yourself. As much as I'd love to tell you that hiding yourself is going to allow you to get the things you want in life, as someone who's done it, it doesn't work. And when you have that burning desire to be seen, to show up, to be your full self, to live in your purpose, you're going to have to show up authentically. Even if you're afraid of how people received you in the past, this is not that moment. This is also what creates long-lasting change, right? When we're talking about those neural pathways and those neurons and those reconnections, none of it matters unless it's natural for you so that you can keep repeating it, so that it becomes a habit and it's the way that you show up and authentically navigate life. So the actionable steps / homework is going to help us take these skills and actually do something with them, right? Because the life that you desire, I promise you, it desires you too. So when we show up and start implementing the things that we're learning, we're not just in this constant learning mode. We're actually taking intentional steps to make it possible for us. I would challenge you, even if it feels uncomfortable, to put on something nice that makes you feel confident in your own body. Talk to someone new. Talk to someone who is naturally in your environment, whether it's school or work or your job. Strike up a conversation with them with the intention of practicing showing up as this version of yourself who desires to be heard and who other people want to hear, and see how you are received in that environment. And it doesn't have to be a long conversation. It doesn't have to be unnatural, but practice having that positive mindset about these interactions and about your ability to do them. And practice these skills. Practice asking these deeper questions. Practice communicating your intentions, slowing down in the moments. And watch how people change. Watch how people react to you. You have the ability and capacity to change for the better. If you made it to this point in the video, as always, I love you and I appreciate you. I want you to remember the things that we're talking about can feel overwhelming in the beginning because they're new, but they really are simple, and the changes that we desire are possible. But most importantly, I want you to have fun with it. Remember why you're doing it. Remember that you are being intentional about creating new in your life, changing things in your life. And that doesn't have to feel daunting. We remember charisma is just an energy. It's a combination of the nonverbal and verbal things. It's just a skill set. It is an avenue for you to display your already beautiful, vibrant personality and energy in a way that is communicated with people so they understand the true, authentic version of ourselves in whatever capacity we need it to be expressed. And I'll see you in the next one.